Hello and welcome to this special interview episode of the Project Bag podcast. A while ago I started a series of interviews and I started with the lovely Tabetha Hedrick, design director of Sweet Georgia Yarns. Well, this time I am thrilled to be welcoming Tabitha back again, this time to talk about the publication of her exciting new book, which is really changing my attitude to swatching, the Switch and Knit Stitch Dictionary. This, of course, was conducted over Zoom. Tabitha lives in America and I am obviously based here in Kent. I apologise in advance for the grainy quality of my camera, but hopefully you enjoy chatting with Tabitha as much as I have. I include a link to where you can purchase the book from in the down box below, and I hope that you enjoy. There is also going to be a very special giveaway, so make sure you watch to the end of the interview. At this point, I would like to thank Tabitha for her time and for being so willing to chat to me, and as always for teaching me something new as well. It's an absolute joy to chat with her, and good luck with the launch. Oh, what's that? Oh, that must mean I'm recording. A little ding dong sound.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Yeah. No, I've already talked about it in my podcast. It's absolutely beautiful. I keep stroking it as well. I love the feel.
I know. I was so tickled that when I went to the publisher and we were bouncing around the ideas, she was like, "This has to be a hard copy book. It just has to." And so she had to like price all that out, and because it's not usually how they print. So I love the feel of it. I love that it's spiral bound, so it lays flat.
Yeah, the spiral bound thing, even before I got to getting excited about what was in the book, I was seriously excited about the fact it's spiral bound, but also that the spiral's enclosed.
Yeah.
So it's not going to ping out and it looks nice on your bookshelf.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like they kind of went all out for it, so it makes me happy.
Yeah. Well, why not? I mean, how you found the time to do this with everything else is beyond me. I saw Felicia's vlog the other week, and she was like, I don't know how she's managed to pull this out of wherever.
No, she was like, I was about to say on her podcast or her vlog or however she does it, she's all like, just holy Moses, like how did you? And honestly, I don't even know. I think there was very little sleep. It was a lot of crazy, but honestly, it was just a huge amount of support from my sample knitters. Could not have done it without them. My friend Abby knit almost all of the swatches that you see throughout the book.
Wow.
Had Danielle and Jessica and oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on the 3 others that I had. But it just, I could not have done it without them.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah. And thankfully, because of the sample knitters, they'd help me iron out a lot of the processes, because trying to figure out how to write a pattern that fits within all of these different number parameters, so it was kind of having to learn to change the language and make some universal modifications to make it more universal. So
because that is definitely an issue with patterns. I mean, just the other day I was looking at one with a friend. It's an older pattern. There wasn't a schematic. Couldn't even work out how the thing went together. It was really bizarre. So all right then, well, I guess we should really start at the top, because we've leapt straight into talking about like the layout of the book and some people might be, of course this is going on my channel, thank you very much for sitting down with me. People might not have heard about the book yet or know what it is that you set out to do, and I'm still stroking the book. I'm not looking down at my phone or anything, guys. I'm genuinely just stroking the book. It feels so nice.
I know, it's just such a smooth, like it's a matte.
Yeah, it's matte. It's nice. Very, very tactile, because we're tactile craft, aren't we? Yeah. I'm not going to do awkward holding up the books throughout. I've upped my video editing skills since we first chatted, and I can actually, I'll put in some nice overlay things as well. Good. Depending on what we talk about. So let's start at the beginning.
Alrighty.
Why this book?
Why this book? That's a great question.
Happen?
I don't know. The idea actually started percolating in my head, gosh, 5 years ago, somewhere around there, where I just was thinking about how many people I run into that wish they could design or just make patterns more personal. I get questions all the time of how can I change the stitch pattern in this without like changing the overall feel, that kind of thing. So the idea just kind of just sat up there. And the publisher, Stackpole Publishing, the editor, Candy, she kind of emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, do you have any ideas? We'd love to work with you again. And I went, well, I have this one. And it was just such a scope that I wasn't even sure if I could pull it off because it just felt monumental. But the idea of pattern recipes paired with a stitch dictionary in one book where everything is interchangeable.
Yeah.
I just was really excited to do it too. Terrified, but super excited.
Yeah. So the premise of the book is that you're giving people the ability to personalize, customize patterns or design their own, but they can lift your stitch patterns and pop it into any of the garments. So it says here there's 700 plus design possibilities. How did you get that? That's some math.
That's crazy. I think so. The book has 12 pattern recipes. You have like a top down sock, a toe up sock. You have a cardigan, a couple different pullover options, some mitts, a hat, a scarf. So all of these little, just kind of a hodgepodge of rather basic shells, I guess you could say. And so at the beginning of the book, I walk you through what it means to swatch with any yarn that you want. If you have a fingering weight yarn or a bulky weight yarn, whatever it is, work on your swatch with choosing one of any of the stitch patterns. I think there's over 80 at the back of the book, and they range from lace to cables to texture to knits and pearls. It's a wide variety of stitch patterns that you swatch with, and then you know what your gauge is, and so that means you just choose the size and you just follow the little columns. So I think it's like really, to me, it's really a nice bridge from following a pattern to designing a pattern. It bridges that a little bit, kind of, so you can see how it works from the process from that very beginning swatch to working through it.
Yeah, and I guess as well, there's a lot of discussion about, it's not a one size fits all even within the size range, is it? So just because someone is bustier doesn't mean they've got larger arms, whereas and this would totally, from what I can see, empower someone to adjust something to fit them.
Yeah, I think because we have the schematics and we have all of the numbers already, so you don't even have to do any math except just figure out what your gauge per inch is. That's the only math you have to do. I think with that kind of information based on your gauge, it'll be a lot easier for people to say, okay, I already know that if I want to make my sleeves wider at the upper arm, this is the number I'm going to need to aim for based on that schematic and where it falls in the chart. And so then they can really, all they have to do is figure out how they want to rate their increases or decreases.
Yeah, because I think, lots of people have always known it's possible.
Yeah.
But seeing it laid out in the tables as you have, it makes complete and utter sense. I mean, obviously I'll put a thing in at the moment so people can see what we're talking about. It takes away the uncertainty. So if someone like me, who I don't have a 3D kind of brain, I can't see a schematic and turn it into a bookcase. I can't see how the component parts would go together.
Right.
but that really helps. I have a confession. Your book has convinced me to swatch.
Oh my gosh.
I don't swatch.
Anyone who knows me knows that I am like hardcore, like swatch. In fact, it got so bad, so my boss, she likes to just wing it, Felicia. And so I would always fuss at her. I'm like, did you do a swatch? Why didn't you do a swatch? You need to do a swatch. And she's like, just stop it with your propaganda. So it just now it's like a big joke. So anytime anybody hears anything within my team or my friends about gauge, they look at me like, yeah, Tabitha had her hand in that, didn't she?
Well, it makes a difference. And the way you explain things is so clear. I mean, I've been knitting for 27 years and not swatching. and quite happy not swatching.
Most people are.
There was an incident that I will share with you shortly to give you a giggle. But just the way you've written it and explained it so gently, it's not like you're giving us a ticking off and telling us, come on guys, you must watch. It was much more reasoned. So I thought, yeah, okay,
Right.
all right, you've persuaded me. Yeah, and actually I found myself quoting you in the shop the other day. We've just reopened the yarn shop that I work at, and I had this person who brought in this lovely pattern. It was an old shale feather and fan scarf, and it wanted however many yards of however much yarn, but she really only wanted to get one skein.
Right.
And so I said, right, okay, so we do a bit of maths and we work out how wide it's going to come out to get the length you want and all of this. And she was saying about will it be long enough? And it was what you said in your Tulamine mystery shawl, that actually it's the row gauge that makes the difference to how much yarn you use.
Yes.
Simple, so simple, but utterly revelatory. It was, yeah, absolutely great. But no, I've started swatching recently, and the first project I swatched for was my grandma's jumper. And my grandma had a yarn store when I was a baby, so I was a yarn shop baby. And she designed, and she was a supreme knitter, but no one ever knits for her. So I decided to knit for her. And I thought, I'm going to do this properly. I'm going to swatch. And she told me what size sweater she wanted me to knit. I'm like, Grandma, are you sure? I think you need the next size up. No. It doesn't fit her. Turns out she was basing it on how loose a knitter she's used to me being. So gave me 2 sizes down to what she actually needed, because I was historically so loose without my swatching. And of course I've done it properly. So my mum's had it. My mum pinched it. It fits her.
Good.
So I've got to knit another one now.
That's too awesome.
I never knew how loose I was. I just assumed I knit a pattern, a cardigan, when I was a tiny, like, UK size 8. And it still fit me when I was like a UK size 16, and it turns out it's because I was that loose. I'd basically get dressing down.
A lot of give.
Yeah, I only found out when I found out my grandma and mum had been unpicking all the knits I'd done for my baby cousin, because they were like 3 sizes too big. I had no point of reference. There were no babies in my life at that point. Yeah, so swatch guys, it's important. So
exactly, that most knitters, like, I think everybody knows it on, the basic level, but a lot of knitters don't really realize how different gauge is, not even just between knitters, but between the different types of fibers that you're using. I'm working with acrylic. I knit, which is not very often, it's not my favorite. I knit a lot tighter because the yarn has very little give, so I tend to knit a lot tighter with it. Versus wool, I tend to relax a lot more, and I'm rather loose when it comes to wool. And then you have just how they react after you wash and dry and otherwise abuse your swatch. And a lot of people don't think that either. My first real foray into gauge was when I was a brand new knitter, and I was visiting my sister-in-law. And she was like, I'm going to take you to this yarn store. And it was like the size of a Walmart. It was humongous in Colorado when I was visiting her. And I was so excited. I'm like, I need to buy something to make. I'm going to make my first sweater. And so we found a magazine there. We found a pattern in it. We went and picked out some Angora yarn. It's amazing. I'm like, I'm going to knit a swatch, and I knit it and I cast off, and then I measured it. Notice there was no blocking between needle and measure. I thought that was what gauge meant. And so so I knit it, and it was like amazing because my gauge was spot on until I washed it for the first time. Angora grows beautifully. Yeah. And so it was a giant circus tent.
Cozy for winter evenings if you get those.
It hung below my knees. It was like the sleeves were like this wide, like but I wore it to death.
Yeah, it's like alpaca with cables and things.
Oh yeah.
If people want to knit entire cabled sweaters in alpaca, I'm like,
yeah, it's not my favorite.
Alpaca's gorgeous, but it does what the Angora does and just sort of flops.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it doesn't really hold its shape very well. And it doesn't like I steam block everything because I prefer that, but it doesn't really like steam blocking either. It just kind of gets this like trap to it. But I don't knit with alpaca a whole lot because I think I have an allergy. My palms get itchy.
Ooh. Is steam blocking, does it matter which type of blocking you use when you're swatching, whether you steam block or because again, going back to the Tillamine, your design, you said that it uses pretty much every yard of yarn, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna swatch because I know this lady likes to swatch. That's fine, I'm gonna do this, I'll do as I'm told, I'm gonna do it properly and be professional, but I'm terrified of running out of yarn. So I knit my swatch, I did not cut it off the ball, I steam blocked it, and then I unraveled it again. So does it matter that I didn't soak it?
No. Well, let me preface this with, it depends on the fiber. Most animal fibers really do their best when they're really saturated with water and then fully dried. So just to put that out there, that's just what it does. But over the scheme of things, what ultimately matters is that however you decide to wet it, whether it's steam or water, that's the gauge that has to match the finished pattern. So as long as you're happy with the blocking method, and as long as you're happy with the fabric and its drape and its fit, you know, it's not puckering, it's not super, you can't stick your fingers through it, it's not super crazy, and the gauge matches, that's all that matters. It doesn't even matter what type of blocking you use.
Yeah.
I prefer steam blocking because I have to knit so much for my job that I just got to get it out here. Like I just gotta, it's like a,
No, it's great. It's so fast, and it means we can do like block swatches at the shop, and I can block them before festivals in a hotel room before I set up my stand. You know, that's great. So from that, does that mean, so if you are someone who uses like a wool wash like soak where you submerge your knits and then sort of really wet block them, it would be a good idea to have done a proper wet block of your swatch then?
I think so, yeah.
That's really interesting.
When I do steam block, I really make sure that heat really saturates the fibers.
Yeah.
Just, you want to make sure that it goes all the way down into the core. So when you wet block, that's what you want to give it, at least a good 10 or 15 minutes in the water so that water can get down into the core.
Yeah.
The yarn just really helps saturate. So all the individual fibers know what's about to happen. And then they do their business, and then they learn to hold hands in their stitch on their fabric.
Oh, that's really cute. That's really cute. I love that. I love that. Yeah, I really like, how did you decide on the projects when you were doing this? Because I've got to say, I really like them, and I like the photography. It's modern and fresh. Whereas lots of sort of starting out to design or starting out with Stitch Dictionaries books don't have that feel.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, I've been a hobbyist photographer for a while. So that was just an easy thing. I told my editor that I wanted to shoot my own photos, and
so you did the photography for this?
I did the photography for it.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and then like, you'll see some of the pictures. I had a friend of mine who does pottery. So we modeled with some of the pottery just because they were such beautiful accessories. And the gals that I worked with were just awesome, super sweet teens. They made me feel so youthful.
Oh, that's always good.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, shooting it, and we just went to my local yarn store and shot them in and around her place, which is Hook and Needle in Maryville, Tennessee, if anybody ever swings through this zone. At Christy, the owner, she just was great. I'm like, I just need a place to shoot. And I loved her shop because she has like this cool old photo booth, and she just arranges it beautifully.
So how did you decide on like what to include though, like garments and accessories wise?
I think I wanted it to be basic enough that they were familiar shapes and familiar silhouettes. It wasn't too out of the box thinking, so that it's easy to pick up a fingerless mitt pattern.
Yeah.
And be able, and so it was really more basic construction so that they could really learn how that whole mix and match thing works.
Yeah, because you've kind of got something for everyone in here, haven't you? You've got sweaters, different necklines, cowls. You've
tried.
Everything. You've got everything at this. I'm looking for the kitchen sink. No, it's gorgeous. Honestly, I'm teasing. It's just mind-boggling. I don't even know where I'd start.
I think it was just I wanted something for everybody and things that you would like to wear. Like my favorite piece in there is just the basic. I have a sleeveless tunic, and then I have an easy tee. Like I just wanted simple, not too much thinking involved with it, but easy, comfortable things to wear that
Yeah.
I think most people would like, and that would fit on as many body shapes as possible.
Yeah, and they could work with different fibers as well, couldn't they? Easily,
Right.
which is good, which is fun.
Exactly.
I like the idea that through following your chart system, you could actually come up with something that is your perfect fit for you. So it's not, this isn't just a book for people who want to learn to design and want to, you know, professionals or anything like that, is it? It's a book for everyone.
I hope so. Yeah, and I think like if you pair it with, say for example, Amy Herzog's, her body shape, you know, fits the flatter, I think is one of the ones that I like. Pair it with that and learning like what suits your particular body shape will really go a long way to helping you choose what stitch patterns will help accentuate the right areas, and being able to fit those within body shapes that you really like.
I just keep looking at the book, sorry. There's going to be some editing in this.
Oh goodness. My favorite part of it though, is the stitch dictionary. Like to me, the patterns were like, okay, I like these, but I really loved making all of the charts and writing the instructions for the stitch dictionary.
So are these stitches that you've kind of come up with, or things that you've picked up over the years, or?
There are things I've picked up over the years. Most of them are, I mean, stitch patterns are a finite source. You know what I mean? There's not like a whole big variety of options, especially when all of the stitches and stitch patterns, and this is why they're all interchangeable, they're all 4-stitch multiples, every single pattern. So all of the patterns are written with the 4-stitch multiple in mind. So yeah, sometimes it was all like, okay, what can I come up with in lace over 4 stitches? So you're not going to see like any big giant flower motifs or anything like that. A lot of them are really just nice, easy, repeatable, all over patterns.
Because it does actually break down to 4 stitches, doesn't it?
Yep.
It's not like divisible by 4. I'm just flicking through. I can't see any charts where it's like 8 stitches or anything like that.
All divisible by 2 or 4.
Yeah. I love that. I love the face you just pulled. You know, what can I possibly think of? You've got over 85 stitch patterns in here, Tabitha. It's amazing. It's really good. It's so
I think the only kind of stitch patterning I did not include was color work, because I just said, all right, my brain's done. My brain can think of no more.
It's a whole other beast, though, isn't it? Color work.
Yeah, that's a whole different ballgame.
Whole different ballgame. It's just beautiful. And so I guess it's the stitches that make the difference when you're designing then.
For me, it is, because there are only so many silhouettes you can work with.
Yeah.
When it comes to shawl shapes or sweaters. I mean, bottom up, top down, sideways, circled, you know, crew neck, V neck, square neck. There's just not that many variations in the sweater. So to me, the arrangement and how you use colors and stitch patterns really are, to me, the hallmark of what makes unique designs at this point in my design life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. It's fun.
So I just like bouncing them around and seeing what happens. And when I add a new color here or change a color here and go from knits and pearls into lace, what does that do?
You could combine, like, because it's all a 4-stitch repeat.
All of them. Yeah.
Just because you're using one doesn't mean you need to use one over the whole thing.
Absolutely. So if you wanted like half of it to be ribbing at the bottom of your sweater and the top part to be lace, go for it. It'll all, as long as your gauge between the two, as long as you've gauge swatched. So we know lace expands, right?
Yeah.
And ribbing tends to condense and get in there. So what that could mean for you is if you wanted ribbing on the bottom, swatch with the needles that gives you the fabric that you want, and then see if you can match that gauge with a different size needle for the lace. Like maybe you need to go smaller needles when you're knitting the lace. So just changing needle size will help you with your gauge without having to do a whole bunch of math.
And that's not all too unfamiliar either, is it? Because quite often in a traditional sweater pattern, you will start your rib on a smaller size needle, swap to your main needle for stocking stitch or stockinette.
Yeah.
It's not anything too wild and out there. This is something that everyone can try, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, I love it. How are we going to work out how to give these away then?
Oh, that's a good question.
That
is a good question. I don't know.
What would you like to do? I kind of feel there should be some sort of prompt, some sort of engagement.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. What do you think? What's normal? I don't even know what's normal these days.
Oh, it's typically a kind of question about, have you ever had a swatch disaster or...
I like that. That's a good question.
Why
swatch disaster?
Yeah.
Disaster story, because we all have one.
Yeah. Go on then. What's yours? You can hold yourself up there.
Yeah, mine was the Angora sweater. That was like, I think, my biggest swatch disaster. Side note on that, I used to teach I called it Save Your Knitting's Life gauge workshop. So I used to teach a workshop on gauge, how to swatch and how to block. And literally 99.8% of my students, we would come in with an unblocked swatch and we would take measurements and then we would block it in class with the steam. And they'd be all like, oh my gosh. Well, one day, a lady that taught in a whole different class, I don't even know what she was teaching, but she overheard my class and I came out and she said, how can you teach a class on gauge? I'm like, well, it's rather easy. I teach da-da-da-da-da, all this stuff. And she was like, I don't think I've ever swatched. Now, this is a woman that knits like 14 sweaters a year. Sweaters are her thing. And I said, you've never swatched for a sweater? I'm like, how often do they fit? She gives them all away.
Oh, crumbs.
And so another lady sitting next to her, she was in the middle of like finishing up the last of these mitered squares. It was for this like Swing Swagger drape knitting book that came out, gosh, like 15, 20 years ago, maybe even. And it was this jacket that's on the cover and it says all of these striped mitered squares that it's made out of. And it's just stunning. And it's like, she's been working on it for like 6 months, just crazy. And she goes, so you're telling me that this jacket that I just spent 6 months knitting might not fit me? I said, it's a possibility. Well, she went home that night, swatched, blocked some of her knits and went, it's going to be 2 inches too small the next day. And she spent the next 3 months like undoing half of it, changing her needles, and then another couple months redoing it all. And she says, you saved my knitting's life because now I have a jacket I can wear.
Wow. So you gotta swatch, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be the person that has to give it away.
No. Or the person that what you give away has to be given away to someone else that it fits, in my case. But
oh, goodness. But yeah.
I love my grandma, but she was always like, I said, oh, what's this? Tension gauge. And I'm like, oh, don't worry about that. Just do what the pattern tells you. You'll be fine. Because her tension was always spot on. She was just one of these that just matched the big pattern house gauges or whatnot. And it's really funny. If I was struggling with a pattern, she'd take it off me. She said, and she would read it aloud to me. And then it would go wrong. And she'd say, take it back. Right, so I took it back. And then she'd read it aloud to me again. A little bit louder. And eventually we sometimes might get to the point where she is bellowing the instructions at me. At that point she takes it off me and fixes it. It's like, thanks, Grandma.
That's about right.
But yeah, so I'm a loose knitter. My mum says I knit like I lasso a cow, so but my stockinette is neater than hers was, so
That's right. That's all. As long as you're happy with the fabric you produce, that is all that matters.
Yeah, because we're doing swatches for the shop at the moment. Because obviously, how do we cope in COVID with people not being able to touch things?
Right, yeah.
So we're knitting and crocheting swatches, and people are helping us out and knitting swatches for us, which we're so grateful for. But they're going obviously with the recommended needle size on the ball band. But some of them have quite a range. So like Rowan fine lace goes from a 2 to a 4, and so it was swatched on a 4.
Right.
But obviously in a stocking stitch swatch, you've got like a fishing net.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that sounds rather quite loose, like a very loose fabric.
Yeah, yeah. So it really doesn't.
I know some people who can knit that very fine weight with a 4 and it still be too tight because we're all different. I don't know. I need to do some research on this just because I'm curious. Like, where did these standards of recommended needle sizes come from? Because a lot of people do think that they have to stick with that needle that's listed on the ball band. And no, you only need to stick with the needle that you're comfortable with and produces the fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if you, I was knitting something and I didn't like the fabric I was getting, but the gauge was okay.
Right.
So I went down a needle size, but went up a garment size. I could have done it more precisely, and I would feel more confident doing that with your book now. But so I got a denser fabric that I liked, and it hung better.
That's good.
Yeah, so playing around with that sort of thing. Yeah, we have that quite a lot actually. People are very married to the colours they see a pattern designed in, the needles, and all of this. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I always encourage people to take a leap of faith, try something new.
Yeah,
it's yarn that can be easily unraveled. I know time can't be bought back, but at least you learn something through the process.
It's worth doing. It's worth doing.
Yeah.
So, Switch to Knit Stitch Dictionary, available from lots of good yarn stores.
I hope so. And if it's not in your yarn store, ask if they can.
Because they may well be very willing to get it. Certain yarn store manager. Yeah. Is it actually out yet? Because it's on pre-order for Amazon in the UK.
It's out here in the United States.
Yeah.
But I do believe it is still just pre-order in the UK. I'm not entirely sure. I know the COVID pandemic has upset things around the world. So a lot of things have been delayed. At some point, like the warehouse that even prints the book their employees had to go home and all of that jazz. So there are delays, but I hope it's very soon. I want to say,
I think it's the 31st.
I think so.
I will check, and I'll put all that information in the down belows for people watching this. But yeah.
Yeehaw. Yeehaw. Yeah. If you want to have them win a copy, they should leave a comment with their worst gauge story.
Worst gauge story. Yeah. And will we random generate, or will we just pick the worst one?
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah. And they might prefer random generation.
Yeah, right. I tend to do it random, to be honest. Too subjective otherwise, but it will be interesting to read, and there's no shaming because we've both shared our swap shame and
no judgment zone.
Absolutely.
We've all done it.
So we're actually going to have two copies of this to give away. I'm going to be giving one away to kind of UK, EU, rest of the world, and you've got one that you'll send out to someone in the US.
That's right.
Perfect. Awesome. So you've got 2 chances to win, which is just brilliant.
Well, yeah, US people have 1 chance to win. UK people have 1 chance to win. Yeah.
But it's the US people have more of a chance than they would have done if it was 1 copy for the US and.
That's true.
I can't math. Why I need this book. This is why it's so helpful. My multiples of 4. They've been done with math prats in mind. But
no more math. Just follow the gauge. Follow the size. That's it. That's all I gotta do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Totally awesome. Oh, thank you so much for chatting with me again.
Thank you for letting me on here and brag about it, because I just
Brag away, it's gorgeous. And that, folks, is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed watching that interview as much as we enjoyed recording it. And don't forget that you can win one of 2 copies of the Switch and Knit Stitch Dictionary by commenting below and telling us your swatching horror story. Don't forget to let us know where you are from though, because obviously if you're in the US you get entered for 1 copy, and if you're in the rest of the world you get entered for another. And even if you aren't lucky enough to win it this time, I thoroughly recommend checking it out. So this is a book that I genuinely believe will change your knitting lives. Thank you very, very much for watching. Thank you for bearing with me as I take some time to sort out editing malarkey. And I will see you very, very soon. Take care. Bye.